This video is made possible by Practical Defense Systems, the best online security training at the lowest prices. You can start your security career today online at pdsclasses.com. Check them out.
Praise the Lord and pass the ammunition. It's time for the GunGuyTV podcast.
Hi, this is Joel Persinger. I'm the Gun Guy. Thank you very much for all of your support of GunGuyTV and everything you do to support this podcast and the video program that we provide on YouTube and other places, BitChute and Vimeo and Facebook and like that. I'm grateful for everything you do because if it wasn't for you, this program would come to a screeching halt. But it isn't because you listen and you watch and you support. So thank you very, very much. Now, what I'm going to talk with you about today are a couple of things. Again, this podcast each time is 1 hour long. The first half an hour of the podcast is free. It's syndicated on your favorite podcast player, and you'll also find a video version of it posted on YouTube and the other video places that we post videos. Then the second part of the podcast is on Patreon only, and that's how we generate support to keep the podcast going, is by folks who want to listen to the podcast, they want to hear the whole thing, and so they help us out a little bit on Patreon. Now, there are other things we do on Patreon, too. There's a video podcast I do twice a month for Patreon patrons only. I also do some behind-the-scenes videos. Right now, I'm checking out emergency food, and the Patreon folks are watching me suffer through eating it. And then I also do some other things on Patreon for my Patreon patrons, the people that are helping us out financially to be able to keep this thing running. So you might check us out if you'd like for that extra content on Patreon, because you'll find content there you won't find anywhere else. And what I'm going to talk about today are a couple of things. One is if you have a firearm, either for home defense or for self-defense, and you're going to carry it, maybe you're in a state where you can carry legally, whether that's concealed or exposed, then, you want to get some training with that firearm. Or even if you have a firearm for home defense and maybe you're in a state where you can't take it outside the house and carry it with you, it's good to have training on how to defend yourself at home. And then in the second part of the podcast, we'll talk about why I believe you should not listen to the mainstream media. Because the mainstream media is a Marxist group and they have their own agenda, which I believe is false, and I'm going to tell you exactly why. We'll talk about that in the second part of the podcast. But first, let's talk about the training component. If you've listened to my podcast at all, you probably know that I grew up in the construction trades. My stepdad was a masonry contractor. My mother and father unfortunately got divorced when I was a very young child. I think I was 5 or 6 years old. And I would spend part of the year with my dad, who was a deputy sheriff, and part of the year with my mom. My mother then married a gentleman who was a masonry contractor. He was a Korean War, well, actually both of them were Korean War era veterans. My dad was in the Air Force and my stepdad was in the Army. But in any case, my stepdad was a masonry contractor, brick and block and cement and stone and slabs and that kind of stuff. And that's what he did for a living. So I came up in that trade as a boy, and that's the trade I learned. And that's what I started doing right out of high school, was working in the masonry trade. So I've been around tradesmen and construction sites and that kind of stuff a lot of my life. I have 2 brothers, one younger and one older, who did that for the rest of their lives and until they retired, and did very well. So it's a really good trade. I'm a big proponent of the trades in general. My son for quite some time was an electrician, although he's now wanting to do something else. He's wanted to be a chef his entire life, and so he's going to go back to school and learn to be a chef and probably leave the electrical trade, which is not a disappointment to me. I want him to do what is good for him, but that's a new adventure in his life. Along the way, though, and the reason why I bring it up is I've used a lot of power tools, and I can tell you that over the years in the trades, I think the handheld power tools, or the small power tools that are the most dangerous that I've seen, are skill saws and certainly chainsaws. And among the smaller tools that anybody uses, particularly on a construction site, whether they're demoing something, which you'd use a chainsaw for in some instances, or you're building something you might use a table saw for, I've seen more fingers missing as a result of table saws, and I've heard about or been told about more leg injuries as a result of chainsaws. Now, why do I bring this up? Well, if you have a tool that is a positive tool that you can do great things with, but that tool is inherently dangerous if not used properly, then getting some training on how to use the tool is a very good thing, and using the various and sundry types of protective equipment that you might use when using the tool is also good. So, for example, with a chainsaw, you want to always use chainsaw chaps. I've seen guys that don't wear them, but I got to tell you, most of the injuries you're going to see from chainsaws are leg injuries, because when that chain bucks or that saw bucks back, sometimes it ends up on your leg, and the chainsaw chaps will reduce the chance of injury or reduce the severity of it. I've seen guys use sticks to push that piece of wood through that last few inches of that table saw, precisely because they don't want to be missing fingers at the end of the day. And I've met a lot of guys who are missing fingers from one hand or another because they took them all off at once on a table saw. Same thing with band saws and that kind of stuff. Well, when you have a firearm is a very dangerous tool. It can be a safe tool, and it can be used safely so that you can defend yourself with it without injuring yourself or someone else whom you don't wish to injure. However, the more training you have, I believe, the better. Now, I've been teaching shooting for many, many, many years. I think, 5 years or 6 years or 7 years ago, my then business partner, who's since left the company, sat down and calculated how many people I had taught shooting, and he came up with a number that kind of astounded me, actually. He told me one day that he figured out that I had personally taught 7,000 people how to shoot at that time, and that's several years ago. Now, just for the record, that's not individually teaching each student. That's teaching classes, and when you total up the number of people in each class and add up all the classes, that's how he came up with that number. And I did do quite a bit of personal one-on-one individual teaching, but there's no way to ever get to 7,000 doing that. But the point is, I've taught thousands of people how to shoot, and that 7,000 figure is probably double or triple that now, because many years have gone by. What I've seen during that time is that folks really do benefit from some great training with their handgun in particular, but whether it's handgun, shotgun, rifle, they benefit from all of those things. Now, I've been a law enforcement instructor for a long time, and I've taught some police officers and a lot of security officers, and I've taught courses on handgun because that's what they carry all day as a sidearm, patrol shotgun, patrol rifle, and I am a certified law enforcement instructor, and that's what I teach. So for many years, I've taught those things, and what I've learned is that the benefit of training cannot be overstated. All right, now that I've made that argument, let me tell you about a great class that you can take quite easily, which will be phenomenal and help you in the application of your firearm as a home defense or self-defense tool. And I should have said the safe application of your firearm as a tool for home defense or self-defense, whether you're carrying it or you just have it for home defense. The National Rifle Association, no matter what heartburn you may have with them at the moment because of Wayne LaPierre or whatever, it has done a tremendous job over the many, many decades, 100 years, or more, in training people. That's really, I think, what they started doing most effectively. They do a lot of things very effectively, but more than any other gun group, the NRA does a better job at training than just about anybody else. At one point, Colonel Jeff Cooper was on the NRA board. So was a gentleman named T.J. Johnston, and they knew each other. Colonel Cooper unfortunately passed away many years ago. He was quite old. And if you don't know who Colonel Jeff Cooper was, he was a Marine Corps colonel. He was the founder of GunGuy Ranch, which you've probably heard of, and he is arguably the father of modern pistol craft. If you go to Gun Sight, Front Sight, you go to any major school to learn how to fight with a handgun, and you're going to learn techniques that were created by Jeff Cooper. There's a lot of them. One that might come to mind would be flash sight picture. That was something developed by Colonel Jeff Cooper. If you ever get to read his books, you'll learn a lot because he was a phenomenal pistol shot, but he was also quite the guy when it came to coming up with ways to use that gun effectively to fight for your life. Well, the NRA wanted to have some courses that they could teach to people for defending themselves at home and for defending themselves on the street. One of those courses is called Personal Protection Outside the Home, and that course was developed by Jeff Cooper and, in part, TJ Johnston. Well, Jeff is dead, but TJ is not. He's still teaching. He's in Orange, California, and he owns a company called AllSafe Defense. Now, I've known TJ for a long, long time. He is easily one of the best instructors I have ever had the privilege to know, and I thoroughly enjoy taking classes with him. Do you need to take that class from TJ? No, but if you're in Orange, I suggest that you do, or if you're anywhere in Southern California, I would suggest you go take the classes from him. The reason why it's fresh in my mind is because I just took the NRA Personal Protection Outside the Home course from TJ, and I'm going to tell you more about that in just a moment. One way you can help support GunGuyTV is by using our Amazon affiliate link. Now, the cool thing about that is it provides support for GunGuyTV, but it doesn't cost you a thing. In fact, you get to do everything you would normally do on Amazon without spending one dime in order to help us, and yet we get money anyway. It's just a marketing fee that we get from Amazon if you use our link to shop. And it really doesn't matter what you buy, whether it's gun stuff or anything else. Now, here's how you can do it. You can go to our website at GunGuy.tv, and up along the top of the website, there's a banner there, a little rectangular banner for Amazon. If you click on that banner, it will take you to the Amazon website using our Amazon affiliate link. And once you're looking at the Amazon website from that link, all you have to do is bookmark that Amazon page. And every time you go back to Amazon, if you'll use that bookmark and start your shopping there, then we will benefit at GunGuyTV regardless of what you buy, and it doesn't cost you 1 red cent. That's one great way to help out GunGuyTV by shopping Amazon using our Amazon link.
The opinions expressed by the Gun Guy are always right, unless they're wrong.
Now let's get back to what I was talking about, which was training for tools which can sometimes be dangerous. So as I said, if you're going to use a chainsaw, get some training on how to use it, whether that's simply reading the instructions or talking to somebody that knows what they're talking about. And the same thing would be true with any other kind of power tool. Well, that's certainly the case when it comes to handguns, rifles, shotguns, or anything else you might employ with which to defend yourself. But certainly some of the most dangerous things that we can use to defend ourselves would be firearms. Obviously, a stick is not as dangerous. A pepper spray is not as dangerous. A knife, while it is incredibly dangerous, is less prone to serious accidents. You're not going to accidentally kill someone across the street by using a knife inside your home. And so those things are very dangerous in some respects, but not quite as dangerous as a firearm. So firearms are something we want to have more training with rather than less. And the other thing I should probably point out, too, is that training is something that should be ongoing. You don't take one class and that's it, and okay, I'm trained for life, because shooting is a perishable skill. And oftentimes, the kinds of shooting that you would have to do to defend yourself, you're only going to get to practice in a class, because that's the only place you're going to find a range situation where you can actually do the shooting and moving and pieing corners and shooting around barriers and working from the holster and the kinds of things that you're going to need to be able to do well and practice in order to fight for your life. So taking classes ongoingly is a very positive thing. And in fact, let me tell you why I was there, and perhaps this will help illustrate that a little bit. The reason I was taking the course with TJ is because as a licensed firearms instructor, I have a number of licenses. For example, I'm a certified instructor with the California Department of Justice. I'm an approved instructor with the San Diego County Sheriff's Department. I'm a certified law enforcement instructor with the National Rifle Association Law Enforcement Activities Division. I'm a licensed instructor with the California Bureau of Security and Investigative Services, and I could keep going on. In fact, there's probably 5 other licenses I have. For example, I'm a certified shotgun coach for the shotgun sports, and that includes skeet, sporting clays, bunker, and so on. And so there's lots of different things that I'm certified or licensed to teach, which require me to do continuing education on a regular basis. Just as my wife, as a speech and language pathologist, has certain continuing education requirements for her licensing and certifications that she has to do every year, I have certain hours of training I have to do in each one of those disciplines every year in order to maintain my licensing and certifications. And every industry is like that. It doesn't matter what you do. A really close friend of mine, his name is John. He's a computer whiz, but that guy has to do continuing education in order to be the genius he is where computers are concerned, and he's the director of IT at the Metro Transit System here in San Diego. So he's at a very high level in this, and he has to continually stay abreast of what's new with regard to information technology. So it really doesn't matter what you do for a living, you have continuing education that you have to do. Well, along the way, I've got to be a little creative as to the courses I have to take, so I'm not taking the same stinking courses over and over again. Otherwise, it gets a little boring after a while. Now, I do go to Front Sight periodically, probably once a year or twice a year. I'll get out there, and I take other courses with other places. And every time I get a chance, I will go take a course at a different place because I get a different view of the particular discipline I'm working on. Well, it just so happens that I have about 8 hours, I think. I have to look now. But I think I have 8 hours I need to complete this year that I haven't done yet for handgun. And so I was looking for an 8-hour course in order to do that. And I couldn't figure out where I wanted to go. I was thinking about going back to Front Sight or maybe going to Gun Sight, or I was looking at 2 or 3 different options. But time and space and place and travel became an issue. I started looking at the courses I had taken with TJ, and it suddenly dawned on me I had never taken the personal protection outside the home course with him, and I had never gotten the personal protection outside the home instructor certification with the National Rifle Association. I thought I had, but I've got so many, I didn't notice that I didn't have that one. So I contacted TJ. He had a class, and I went. Now, in order to get the instructor certification, I have to not only take the course itself, but then after I've taken that course, and only after I've taken that course, I get to go back and then take the instructor course on how to teach it. So this past weekend, I went up and saw TJ in Orange, and I took the personal protection outside the home course. I had already taken the personal protection inside the home course years ago, and I had gotten the certification to teach that course with the National Rifle Association years ago. I cannot overstate the quality of those courses. They are outstanding. The Inside the Home course addresses all of the issues that you're going to face defending yourself inside your home. In the case of a burglary, or in the case of a home invasion or something along those lines, and you need to defend yourself in your home, this course is going to prepare you for that better than most courses I've ever seen or ever taken. And as you can tell, I take a lot of classes because I'm required to. I would like to anyway, but being required to sort of twists my arm and says, okay, Joel, you have to go take a shooting class. Oh, twist my arm, It's one of those, right? But that is an outstanding course, the Personal Protection Inside the Home course. And no, I'm not getting paid a dime from the National Rifle Association to tell you this. I'm referring you to these courses because there are a lot of shooters out there who have guns who have never had formal training. And there's a lot of folks who've just bought a gun because they're concerned about COVID-19 and the civil unrest and the Black Lives Matter, Antifa, and all this other crazy stuff that you're seeing in the news all the time. And so gun sales have gone through the roof. Well, not everybody can peel away a week and go to Front Sight, or a week and go to Gun Sight, or a week and go to Thunder Ranch, or a week and go to the 6-Hour Academy, or a week and go to Academy or whatever, or sometimes 2 weeks. And not everybody's got $2,500 or $3,000 to go do that, because those courses can be very expensive, and there's a reason they're very expensive, because they're very, very good. And it doesn't matter which of those schools I mentioned that you go to, they're all phenomenal. They're all phenomenal. I'm going to say it a third time. They're all phenomenal. If you ever get a chance to go to any of those schools, I strongly suggest that you do so. You will walk away stunned at how much you will learn and how fantastic the courses are at those places. So I do urge you to go there, and I'm not trying to talk you out of it. I go to those places or places like that as often as I'm able to go. And I encourage police officers to do it. I encourage civilians to do it. And I encourage military members to do it. One of the best courses I think I've ever taken is the NRA Law Enforcement Instructor Course Series. Now, you can't take that unless you have a law enforcement history or you're in the law enforcement training business. You have certain requirements you have to meet in order to be able to get into those law enforcement instructor courses. But if you're a law enforcement officer and you're listening to me right now, I strongly suggest you get in there and take those courses because they are phenomenal as well. But let's get back to personal protection courses inside and outside the home. The first one you want to take is personal protection inside the home, which I just told you briefly was focus entirely on the trouble you will face inside your home fighting for your life. It is an outstanding course series, and it is well worth taking. I believe it is a 2-day course as well. They're available on the weekends, and the nice thing about these courses is, let's say you can't get to Orange, California to take it from TJ Johnston, which if you're in Southern California or anywhere near there, I suggest you go take that course with TJ. You will not find it taught better anywhere on the planet. However, if you can't do that, the nice thing is it's an NRA course. You're going to find NRA instructors around the country who are trained very, very well and certified to teach that course, many of whom, by the way, are trained and certified by TJ Johnston because he's an NRA training counselor. It's one of the things that he does. So you'll be able to take that course and learn a ton. You'll also be able to take probably from that same instructor the NRA Personal Protection outside the home course, which I'm going to give you some detail on in just a moment. I mentioned the fact that I'm a firearms instructor and that I have a company that teaches those things. Now, predominantly what we do is we train security officers in the state of California for their licensing because, like most places, they have to be licensed to work. So they have initial licensing they have to have. And then, as I mentioned, every industry has it. They have continuing education they have to complete every year. And everything they do, every new thing they wish to have or carry or whatever requires additional training. And that's what we do at Practical Defense Systems. So if you're looking for a job, maybe you lost your job because of COVID and you got to find something to do, remember that security is part of public safety and it's considered essential. So if you're in California and you'd like to get started in the security business, check us out at pdsclasses.com. That's Practical Defense Systems at pdsclasses.com, or you can just Google it.
Saving the Second Amendment, one episode at a time. This is the GunGuyTV podcast.
The personal protection outside the home course, which is what I'm going to detail for you now, is an advanced shooting course. Make no mistake about it. You have to have some advanced skills in order to get through that course and do so well. Now, the first day, obviously, each day has some classroom time, and that's very important because that's the opportunity not only for you to learn the theoretical things that you need to have in mind, but also for the attorney to come to class and talk to you about the legal aspects and pitfalls of defending yourself with a gun. However, the majority of the class on both days is actually shooting. The first day is, I would say they call it actually the basic day. I'm not so sure there's anything basic about it, but it's not nearly as adrenaline-filled or advanced as the second day. And when I'm telling you this, I don't want to frighten you away from the class. It's doable, and you can do it. I know with TJ, one of the things he does is he actually has a pre-class class. So if you feel that you're not ready in your skill level to take this course, you can come take his pre-class class, and he's going to get you up to speed so that you can get through this course and do it very, very well. Now, from what I could understand, most of the people who were in the course that I was in had taken the pre-class class. I hadn't done that. I guess I'm a prideful dog, and I didn't think I needed it, and as it turns out, I don't. But nevertheless, some of them apparently did. So they went and they took the pre-class class, and they all did very, very well. Now, some did better than others, but they all got through the class very well, and they all learned a ton. There was a doctor and his wife there. These folks were not experienced gun people. In fact, very few of the people in the course were actually gun people. There were a few, but most of them were just honest, law-abiding citizens who do different things for a living, who are now concerned about their safety, and some of whom had never purchased a gun until recently when they discovered that perhaps having one would be a really good idea. So there were a lot of the new gun owners that we would see through this whole coronavirus thing that we hear about all the time, but they were taking this course. So these were not people, in many cases, who had years and years and years and years of experience. They came and they took this course and they did brilliantly with it. So I was very impressed by that. TJ's a great teacher, but I suspect that there are other teachers who do the same thing, who have a pre-class class that will help you get up to speed for the course. So don't be intimidated by the fact that the course is challenging and it is an advanced course. You're going to be drawing from the holster with live ammunition. You're going to be shooting under pressure. The first day was not as pressure-filled. You were doing quite a bit of drawing from the holster, drawing from concealment, learning positive draw strokes so that you don't put your finger on the trigger until the sights are on target, so that you don't have your finger on the trigger when you're reholstering your gun. You're learning how to clear your garment in order to draw your firearm from concealment. Those are all basic things that need to be learned before you can speed up. And you get a little bit in the first day of movement. And when I say movement, you get a little bit of shooting and moving, or moving and shooting. You get a little bit of learning to work with cover in the first day, but you spend a lot of time pressing the trigger and learning that draw stroke, learning to clear the garment and be able to apply some pressure associated with that on that first day. The second day is pretty much all movement. You're learning to shoot while moving forward, shoot while moving backward, shoot while moving to cover, moving to cover and shooting, shooting from cover standing, shooting from cover kneeling, shooting from cover prone. These are all things you're learning in the second day of that course. You're learning to shoot from retention, which means you're drawing from the holster, but you're not pushing it out in front of you in a standard firing stance. Instead, that gun is tucked in real close to you because that's where you're going to have to shoot if your attacker is in your face. You don't want him to grab the gun from you. So you're learning to shoot from retention. And once you have that skill down, now the target is coming at you as fast as possible, and you start off at about 21 feet having to draw and fire before the target gets to you, and then you move closer and closer and closer and closer and closer until you just don't have enough time to do it anymore. And what each individual student learns is at what distance do they not have enough time to draw that firearm, step out of the way, and get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 shots, however many they get, on target from retention. That was a very useful skill, and it's kind of a high-pressure skill because you have something coming direct at you very, very quickly, so it puts you in as close a position as you could be in to real life of having somebody charge you, come at you. You're learning to operate in a 360-degree environment because if you're defending yourself, we don't operate in a two-dimensional environment. We don't operate where we only look one direction. We have to look for threats everywhere, and we have to learn how to turn and address them, whether that threat is to our right, to our left, behind us, or in front of us. And that's something that you learn in that class. It is a phenomenal class. It really is. Prepare to do a lot of shooting and prepare to burn through a lot of ammo. But when you walk out of that class, a couple of things are going to happen. One, you're going to have a big smile on your face because this is stuff that most people have never done before. I have to admit, I've gotten to do all of the things I just described many, 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 many times. So what I was looking for is there a better way? Am I going to learn a better way to do what I've been taught to do here than I've learned before? And in a couple of cases, I did. I learned a better way to work around static cover. It was just more efficient and more effective than what I'd learned previously. I learned a different way to draw than I'm used to doing. I don't know whether it was better, but it was different, and I found it to be very effective. I learned 2 or 3 things which were awesome, and what I really appreciated about the class was the personal instruction and the number of assistant instructors TJ had there, but also the pressure. I appreciated the fact that the class put pressure on me and made me perform under pressure because that's when things begin to fall apart. So that's the kind of training you really, really need. So I strongly advise, if you can not take any other course, or even if you can, that you put on the list of courses that you take for your firearm, particularly if it's a handgun and you're carrying it or you're using it for home defense, the 2 NRA courses which are the best for that, and those would be NRA Personal Protection inside the home and NRA Personal Protection outside the home. I've now taken them both, and I can tell you from personal experience, they are both extremely good courses and well worth your time and money, and frankly, they're really inexpensive by comparison. You're not going to spend $2 or $3 grand taking these courses. You can, really, including a hotel stay and everything else, and ammo, it probably cost me $500 or $600. I'd have to think about it, but probably around there. And I did the reloading, so I just loaded my own ammo. But it's not a terribly expensive course to take. I'm going to go take the instructor course now, and I'll report back to you maybe at the next podcast and let you know how that went. But I suspect that that'll be a great course as well. You don't necessarily need to do that unless you want to teach, but certainly go out there and get some training. And if you can get training that simulates actual fighting and do it with an organization that you can trust to do it well, and certainly NRA falls into that category, then I urge you to do that. You will find, I'm sure, an NRA instructor somewhere near you who's certified to teach these courses. Remember, they are personal protection inside the home and personal protection outside the home. And if you haven't already completed them, I urge you to do so. To say that they're awesome would be the understatement of the century. Well, I think I've just run myself completely out of time, haven't I? So if you're on Patreon, I want you to stick with me. We're going to get into the second part of the podcast. I'm going to explain to you why I think we should not pay attention to the mainstream media and really look at things the way they want us to, because they are completely and utterly wrong. And I'm going to tell you exactly how I know that. And we'll get into that the second part of the podcast, which is on Patreon only. So if you're on Patreon, stick with me. If you're listening to the podcast on your favorite podcast player, or you're watching the version on one of the video distribution points like YouTube, thank you very much for everything you do. Have a wonderful week. And wherever you go, whatever you do, please be safe.
You've been listening to the GunGuyTV podcast.